Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are connecting from today. Thank you so much for being part of our community, Hacking HR. And thank you so much for tuning in to this Hacking HR live chats that we have every now and then, not every day, but we have them every now and then. We invite talented and brilliant authors to come to our show and share their results of their research, their findings, their insights, their ideas, and anything else that they want to share with all of us in this community, with the hope, of course, to inspire us to action and to create a better workplace from HR. I am very excited that today we're going to be talking about what perhaps to us in Hacking HR and to me personally is one of the most important topics that we should be all talking about, which is belonging. And we are going to get there in a second. And before that, I would love for all of you who are connected live right now to please let us know where you are connecting from in the world. Just post it in the chat. Let us know whatever you are, whatever you're tuning in from. We'd love to read where you're connecting from. If you have any questions, any comments, any burning insight that you want to share with all of us in this community and with me and my guest today, Brad, please make sure that you post it in the chat box so that I can, as much as I can, of course, read your comment or your question, and as long, of course, as it is related to the topic that we're going to be covering today, which is belonging. And before I invite Brad to the screen with me, I want to say something, and I'm hoping that maybe Brad kind of like lead us in the to the answer to this question. We've been stuck in the conversation about engagement, disengagement, productivity, how it's declining, and we had a little bit of a spike in 2020 and 2022, and how the engagement rate for employees around the world, and particularly in the US, has been stagnant at something like 20% over the past over 20 years. And the way I think about it is like, yeah, we got to pay attention to productivity, we got to pay attention to engagement, but all I keep thinking about is this. We are creating wealth in the world. The economy has grown significantly, even though productivity numbers have declined, even though engagement rates have remained the same. And the question that I ask myself is, what would happen with productivity? What would happen with engagement at work? What would happen with solving the complex and compelling challenges that we have in the world if people felt that they belong at work, if people felt that when they come to work, they matter, the work they do matters, not only for shareholders and making them richer than they are, but also the work they do matters for the entire community at work, for the society at large, for them individually as people, as human beings. What would happen if we created the conditions for people to feel that they belong at work? What kind of magic can we create from that? What would be the results of doing something like this? And I am excited about exploring that question today with Brad, the author of the book, Belonging Rules: 5 Crucial Actions That Build Unity and Foster Performance. So super excited to welcome Brad to the screen with me this morning. Good morning, Brad. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Excited about the conversation on belonging, one of my personal favorite topics, one that we talk a lot about in our conversations on Hacking HR with our guests, in our panels, and in the content that we share. So anyway, very excited about this, Brad, and I would love for you to begin here. Maybe introduce yourself to our audience so that everybody knows a little bit more about you, and maybe kind of like respond to this question: why do you write a book about belonging?
So I'll start with a little bit about me. I lead a company called Deutser, and our whole focus as our organization is to affect change, but it's change through people. And so the only way that companies, organizations, society can address the complexity of the environment today is by bringing people together, by connecting people and moving them forward. So our whole business, our strategy, our culture, the engagement work we do is all built around kind of the idea of people and a human approach to change.
Mm.
And I originally was going to write a very different book. I was originally going to write a book. This is my second book. My first book was on leading clarity, and it was around organizational constructs of how we lead with clarity and how we drive performance. And I was going to build off that with a book, Leader of You. And as I was beginning the process of it, some clients, my literary agent, some different people said, Brad, the work that you are doing right now, the work that you are doing inside organizations, really complex, sometimes ugly work,
Mm.
needs to be the story. And
Mm.
so I said, I don't know that that's really what I want to do. But the reality was that's what we were called to do. And we felt that the work that we were doing around this idea of belonging, how do we create spaces for leaders? How do we think about leadership from a fundamentally different perspective to deal with the competing societal, social, political issues all around the world? Leaders are all inundated with that. And so we thought, you know what? Let's tell the stories of what we're working on. Let's tell the stories of the leaders that we believe are the most human-centered, belonging leaders, and let's put it out there. So that's where this book came from.
Mm. That is fantastic. And I'm glad you did. I'm glad you put it out. And I am hoping that anybody who's tuning in right now go and get their copy of Belonging Rules. Brad, let me ask you this. We've shared this very often on our Hacking HR community, and it is this idea that culture and within the larger theme of culture, belonging, are not a distraction from business leaders and managers getting the work done and getting results done. It is the way to get the work done and to get the results done. And if they see them as a distraction, they are missing perhaps the biggest opportunity to increase productivity, to increase engagement, to deliver better results. So, can you comment on this? Can you comment on why culture and belonging within the full theme of culture is it's perhaps the most underrated but most powerful tool that leaders have at their disposal to get things done at work?
Unfortunately, many years ago, maybe that was true, that strategy was the overarching driver of a business, that we could force our way, our people, we could demand our people to do certain things. But what we know is that the world has changed, and the
Mm.
research is very clear that culture is not just a soft, fuzzy thing that we do to make people feel good. It is the performance driver in an organization. So there is no question about this. There are leaders who still believe that it rests way below. There's
Mm.
always that conversation. Culture eats strategy for lunch every day. And in my first book, I was told by my publisher, prove that. And the reality is, I couldn't prove it, so I couldn't put it in the book. But what we did prove was that there was this equilibrium that exists in an organization where the strategic system and the cultural system, the culture system in organization, there has to be a balance. So it's not about one being more important than the other. It's that the fact that they are equally important. And what's happening is that many leaders still view it as the young child of
Yeah.
strategy. What's interesting is our research on belonging takes all of that and throws it out. It takes
Mm.
all of the old thinking, or even maybe what some people believe is the current thinking, and it says, nope, not really relevant today. And here's what we found. And I think, Enrique, it's really what's interesting. So what we learned is 9 out of 10 people believe that belonging is important or extremely important. 9 out of 10. in this world where we can't agree on very much, we can agree that
It's a
belonging
good
is
number.
important.
Yeah.
It's a big number. Like
Yeah.
even the fringes can't really fight this one. So start with that. And then our research goes to show that that belonging, and this is what's really interesting, belonging is more important than strategy. Belonging is more important than culture in driving engagement,
Mm,
satisfaction, and performance. So this is
mm,
a big shift. And we've done
yeah.
studies like this for many, many, many years. And strategy always sits up top with culture right up against it. Again, that same kind of hierarchy, how people traditionally have thought about it. But what our research is showing is that no, that's not right. It's actually belonging that sits above it. And take
Mm,
that a step further, take it a step further, belonging is so important to the workforce that people are willing to sacrifice salary to be part of an organization in which they belong. So, going back to your original question, is this a distraction? Yes, it's a big distraction if it's not your focus.
yeah.
It's a big distraction if you're focusing on only strategy or you're focusing on all these other initiatives. It's time to elevate and make the focus on creating this space for belonging, a space where people can come together with different views to elevate the whole of the organization.
So I guess you will be coining soon the term belonging drinks culture for coffee in the morning and its strategy for lunch. When are we going to see that? When are we going to see a quote of the kind in the coined of the next few days or weeks? I don't know when.
Well, I think we just did it. I'm going to have to
We
put
just
your name under it. I'll
no
quote
no
you all day long. I'm
no. That's
grateful.
you. That's you. That's your research, and I am so thankful that you did it and that you've put that out because still, the way I think about it is, yes, you need the data, you need to do the research to prove that such a claim, withstands the test of experimentation and the test of real life. But the way I think about it is, once again, real life. I go to a workplace and you may have the best strategy in the world, and then you see people treated poorly by their managers. You see that they are burned out, stressed. When you ask them, will you leave this organization if you found a place where you're taken care of, but you will be paid 20% less? And 70% of people say yes, I would leave, in a heartbeat. So the best strategy, it's just a matter of simple, kind of like common sense. The best strategy in that company won't, in my view, be delivered with performance and high productivity, just because the people are feeling that way. So even if, so sometimes, yeah, I understand you need the research, to showcase this, but I don't think you can get the best out of anybody if that person doesn't feel that they belong, or they feel that they're exploited, or they feel that their mental health and their well-being, are being trashed every day in that organization.
You're right. And what are organizations grappling with right now? They're people.
Yeah.
They're people. How do
Yeah.
we keep our people engaged? How do we keep them? How do we retain them? They're people. We're always looking for the best people. Oftentimes we have them. We're not building them up. We're not lifting them up to be the
Yeah.
best that they can be. And Enrique, I think it's interesting that there's an underlying societal element that I think too many businesses aren't paying attention to. And what that is there's an epidemic of loneliness.
Yeah.
People feel disconnected. They're going to social media. That's not real. I
Yeah.
have 100,000 friends on social media. I have this. It's a world that we live in, and so people are clamoring for that real human connection.
Yeah.
How do I be part of something where I can bring myself there? I'm part of something larger than me. but I'm part of that. And addressing this or understanding, being willing to accept that there is this disconnect in our world, there is this epidemic of loneliness. It really adds another layer and another responsibility on organizations to say, you know what, we can do more. We
Yeah.
can be more. And that's really at the core of what we do, what my company does, what my book is about how can we be more for our people? How can we do more for our people, which is good for them. But at the end of the day, it drives the bottom line. It protects our workforce.
Yeah.
It builds our workforce and it drives performance. And so you kind of scratch your head and go, wait a second. If we know, and as you said, if we know going into organizations that, hey, this just makes sense. People talk about it. They want it. We see high performing organizations that exhibit it. The research is conclusive about it. We're talking about not a research with a couple hundred people, but 15,000 plus, multiple surveys. So we're seeing this time and time again, over and over. And yet there's still kind of a slow move to embrace it.
Yeah.
So that's what we're hoping to do, is to expedite the conversation.
Yeah. Why is that though? And you partially answered the question, but I would love for you to maybe dig a little deeper on why is it so hard for leaders to understand. Once again, I'm going to go back to what we said before. This is not a distraction of achieving your business results. It's the means to achieve your business results. So why is it so hard for some business leaders, from some direct managers, to understand that to deliver results, they can tap into the power of creating the conditions for people to feel that they belong? And I'm going to ask you the same question, but in a little bit of a different way, which is this: very often when they say they care, but they don't care that much, then they put this on the shoulders of HR. Culture is an HR thing, belonging is an HR thing, or alternatively, they tell you, this is not a charity. We're not a mental health center here. All we are here to do is to make money. So you got all these things, right? I mean, we are a business. We're not a charity or a group of therapists, to be doing this for people. We're not their family, or we are, but we don't care about them building connection. That's what they probably say. Or this is an HR thing. Or if I, invest any energy into creating the conditions for people to feel that they belong and have the right culture, then I'm getting distracted from getting results, from doing the work that I am supposed to be doing. Why is it so hard for some business leaders and some direct managers to get it?
I wish I had the perfect answer for you, but I think it's the transition that we're in, Enrique. I think it's a transition we're in from a leadership perspective. There's a historical view of leadership, and it's top-down control. And I am not a leader unless I am driving certain results.
Yeah.
And I look at boards and I work with boards and say, hey, your leader's going the wrong pathway. I had a sign in my office. We have a beautiful office and we do spaces, and the sign said, the only line we care about is our clients' growing bottom line. And one of my largest clients came to my office and said, you don't get it. And I said, but you were losing $11 million, $12, $15 million, 3 years in a row. He goes, you fundamentally don't get it. He goes, I thought you got it. And I said, Dave, help me understand. And he said, think about it. What is it that you really do? And I said, well, he said, we are in an industry that the industry killed people every 90 days. They were the best in the industry, not killing people every 3 years. Now it's 15 years. We've created happiness. We've done all these different things, all related around people. He goes, don't you get that is the magic, by creating these spaces for people to be their best, to perform at their best, which, oh, by the way, then drives our performance. And now we're making 50, 60, 80 plus million dollars a year. And not many leaders see the world through that lens. And I think it's because we are trained. Leaders are trained to believe through a very business school kind of mindset that it's about the metrics. It's the hard metrics, not the soft stuff. We need to stop talking about culture as being soft, because culture positivity, and belonging are more clear metrics of an organization and their ability to achieve their desired future state than anything on the strategy side of it. So creating these conditions is a distraction, is old school leadership. And that's why
Yeah.
we talk a lot about human-centered leader who are vulnerable, who are willing to acknowledge that, you know what, it's okay to engage the whole of the workforce, even though they may have different opinions than me. And I think so much of it lies at this fear of change. That if I embrace my people, if I begin to give in, quote unquote, give in and give more to my people, then I am weak.
Yeah.
And the reality is, leaders are weak by not embracing, by not understanding, by not connecting with, by not serving their people. It's time for leaders and organizations to embrace that belonging, culture are the drivers, and that it is owned, in my opinion, and our research will show at the C suite, they need to live it, exhibit it, model it, fund it.
Mm.
And then HR leaders are then empowered to bring it to life.
Yeah.
This is where I think, kind of as we think about the new HR, is giving HR the funding, the power, the space to be creative, to say, how am I going to not only connect with the brain, but how can I connect with the heart? And that's at the core of what we're doing here.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I absolutely love that kind of HR that is empowered to do that, where in an organization where every all the leaders believe that belonging and culture are the outlets or the avenues to actually, you know, just, that you have to traverse to make things happen, to bring the strategy to life, that you have to really believe in it, that you have to fund it, that you have to keep other leaders accountable for this too, right? I mean, this we talk about all these things, and there's always a missing piece, which is, yeah, all right, so we care about this, but what happens if somebody doesn't? What happens if somebody is actually doing the opposite thing that we are saying we care about? How do we keep that? First of all, how do we measure whether they are delivering results on culture and belonging or not? And second, what happens if they are not? So how do we keep them accountable for that? And how do we make or take the measures that we need to take to address whatever is perhaps breaking the spouse or the expected behaviors, right? Any insights about that, Brad?
Yeah, so I have a simple line, and I tell leaders all the time. Look, as a leader, you have one choice when it comes to people. You can change the people or change the people. It's a really simple, it's really a fundamental, it's a simple construct. Change the people or change the people. I'm a big fan of changing the people. So I'm a big fan of changing the people so I don't have to change the people. And so how do we think about changing the people? Well, we think about changing the people not because we can't make people change. There is no leader that's going to say, Enrique, change and do this.
Mm.
I believe in people, and I believe that the greatest HR, people-centric people understand that it's giving a construct, it's giving a framework for people to grow. People want to do good in organizations. So when we talk about changing the people, it's about setting the expectations. And when we set the behavioral expectations for an organization, people invariably are able to achieve the expectations we set. We just don't set them, and we're not ambitious enough often when we set them. So that's number one. Number two, how do we measure it? Well, there's a lot of ways to measure, but I think it starts with what we want to measure. So for us, from a people standpoint, we develop what we call the way for people, for our clients. It's their cultural Bible, if you will. It is their values, and not one word values, but it's values that are action oriented, that have descriptions. And we believe, as part of the cultural ecosystem, the elements that go together It's values plus behaviors.
Mhm.
And I think that the behavioral piece of this is so misunderstood and not really used to its full potential. And if we think about values in an organization as the we, what we collectively aspire to do, and the behaviors as the me, it's the me and the we coming together. And there's a set of ways that we measure that. We will also measure broader measures. We'll measure belonging in an organization. That's very predictive of what's going to happen in the future. And we measure positivity. And positivity is becoming one of the most important measures,
Mm.
along with belonging, to tell us, are we going to be able to achieve our desired future state? So those are a couple things that we measure. We like to measure the overall organizational health through a lens of not just engagement, but we'll measure it through direction, operations, people, and engagement. We're looking at the whole system to give us a sense of where people are. So we'll look at it organizationally, we'll look at it departmentally, we'll look at it individually with a bunch of different measures to give us a sense of, you know what? Are we doing the right things? And
Mm.
is it as important to the people as it is to the leaders?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you this, Brad, and thank you for bringing up this idea of measuring actually, the level of belonging in an organization. And I know the science and there's research behind it. But if you were to come to an organization and you're not allowed to talk to anybody, you're not allowed to look at data, you're only allowed to observe what's happening for, maybe say a couple of days. Is there any way that you can say, wow, people here really are connecting with each other and they are supporting each other, they're helping each other out, they're getting stuff done, versus, wow, people here really hate each other, and if they had the opportunity, they would run away from this thing? Is there any sort of observable indicator that could tell you that level of belonging in that organization?
Sure. Yeah, ethnographic research is a big piece of of some of the research that we do. We believe in our health studies, we believe in our belonging studies, but to your point, Enrique, it's being in an environment. Come to my office for 5 minutes, for an hour, for 2 hours. You will see connections at a deeper
Mm.
level
Yeah.
than many organizations. I don't need research to tell me what's working or not. I'm a big energy person, and as weird as that may
Yeah.
sound, you feel the energy, you feel the connectivity. One of the belonging rules is listen without labels. And what happens is if I can go in an organization and I can just sit and I can listen and I can observe, with my eyes, I can see the connection. I don't discount the smiles. The old 10-5 rule, where 10 feet away, you look up and acknowledge someone, 5 feet away, you say, hello, how are you? You engage them. You see in organizations that are disconnected where people look down.
Yeah.
There's not the intentional, there's not the smile. So there's
Yeah.
things you can see with your eyes. You can see people with the door shut. You can see people retreating. Not hard to see that. But listening without labels is powerful because we're not just listening at the highest level. We're listening for what's said sometimes and not said. And I think by just being in an environment, if we're truly open and we are open to being what we call these human-centered leaders, these belonging leaders, vulnerable, really open to what's happening, you're able to get as much as you can from any research study, and it tells you, you know what, we're a little bit off. Remember,
Yeah.
organizations can have strong cultures, but without it being intentional, there's a
Hmm.
there's a degree or two or three of change every year. And so we can look up and all of a sudden a healthy organization can still be healthy. It's just going in a different direction.
Yeah.
And so it's just pausing. It's that gentle pause. It's that breath to go, what is really happening? I'm looking around. What's happening? And I do
Yeah.
think you can feel it and sense it.
Yeah. 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 I'm a big fan of organic connections that are happening in the workplace, not mandates to collaborate with other teams or collaborate, intra-team, but organic connections. Brad, going out of his office and, knocking on somebody else's door in a different team. Enrique, you work in HR, you work in finance, and then, hey, I got this thing going on. Can we just talk about it, right? Or it doesn't have to be a work thing necessarily. I'm a very big fan of that because that tells me the degree, and that's observable, by the way, that tells me the degree of trust. It tells me the degree of collaboration and cooperation. It tells me the degree of how people want to get the work done in that organization. And there's ways to measure that, like we now have organizational network analysis that allows you to say, hey, like this team here is collaborating with this team. They don't have anything to do with each other, but look at all the lines connecting, people in those different teams, meaning, they are going out of their way to get into that sort of other unit, other team, for whatever reason it is. And I'm a big fan of that, because I believe that a sign of a healthy culture is when people are able to build those connections with each other organically, not through a mandate, but organically.
I don't care. To me, I don't care in an organization if anybody if someone's going from office to office, even if there is no business reason for them to do it, and it's just a human connection, we're all part of the same team.
Yeah.
Take about this, and whether it's it's a football team in England or a football team, and it doesn't matter where it is, or in Spain. Think about the whole of the team. I may be on offense. I may be at this place. I may play defense. I may be whatever my role is, but we're all part of a whole, one whole. We're all here to win. And the win is the best teams. Everyone is connected, whether they work directly with each other or not.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
leaders who encourage getting to know each other on a human level. If we know each other, if you and I get to know each other on a human level, and I know about family, you know about family, you know what I care about, I know what you care about, I'm willing to fight for you.
Yeah.
We're willing to fight together when there's challenge. And I think one of the dangerous things in offices today is the concept of walls.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not advocating for an open office.
Yeah.
But some offices, that's the way they work. But I think that we have invisible walls that we put up, that this is the other side of my company and this side, and I only need to stay with the people who are like me. Think about that from a societal perspective. I'm only going to talk to people in society or get information people who think like me. Why do we think that's a good idea in our companies?
Yeah.
Sales side and the production side, getting to know each other. The distribution side, wow, that's really interesting. The creative and the strategy, we're one. And when we change the mindset and leaders begin to build bridges, and we build bridges to invite people on to connect, or as we talk in belonging, create these spaces that we invite everybody in and cross-pollinate, we're all better for it. The workplace, I couldn't agree more with you that the spaces that we create have to encourage those organic connections, those organic interactions.
Yeah.
We design spaces all over the country and world, actual physical office spaces, to encourage those more organic connections. It's an important piece of business today.
Yeah. What's sort of ironic sometimes about so many things that are happening in the workplace? I find it very ironic that by simple biology, by evolution, right, there are things we do naturally, right? We are, whether for because we need it, or because we want it, but we are drawn to collaborate. We're drawn to work with other people, to build tribes, to build communities. And you really have to go out of your way to prevent that from happening, instead of making it happen, because it's what happens naturally. And in the workplace, we have done what's unnatural, which is building the walls that separate us, the silos. And whether you're in an open space or in, offices, even then, those walls, like you called before, invisible walls exist. So we are, not only are we making it harder for people to connect with each other, we are creating, preventing what would happen naturally if we weren't there. If we put a problem in the middle of a table and we didn't have, people didn't know about rules about anything, they would probably come together to say, all right, how the hell do we solve this problem, right? But now it is like, no, wait a second, Brad. You don't work in this team, so I'm sorry, but you can't be here, or you got to talk to your boss before, to give you permission to join this team and use a couple of hours of your time. So we, ironically, and belonging wise, but also in many different respects, we have designed organizations in a way that is unnatural to the way we would normally behave as human beings if we were out in the wild. So any comments on that?
There's so many comments on that. I love the way you phrase that. I love you. It is unnatural.
Yeah.
Think about what leaders are doing or have done historically to take what is innate in the human brain. So in my book, in Belonging Rules, one of the people I interviewed is a neuroscientist, a world famous neuroscientist, Dr. David Eagleman, who's at Stanford University. And he's a brilliant, and he talked about the brain and how the brain is wired and the need for that human connection. And yet, as you said, the invisible walls. And that's really at the heart and soul of what Belonging Rules is about. How do we get rid of those walls? How do we begin to build spaces, real, physical spaces and imaginative spaces, if you will? How do we create those spaces to give people a place to come together on something of shared importance? That's one of the underlying kind of principles of our book, is about creating these spaces and just inviting them in to this bigger space. Yeah. And the space is defined by our values, our purpose, our identity. Think about this space, again, going back to what's natural. Yeah. A space where we don't have to agree to belong. Yeah. But there's a shared concept, there's a shared understanding of what's expected of each of us. There's an invitation into it. And that's really at the core of what this book is all about, Belonging Rules. And it's about going back to, I love what you said about being more natural, about being more human. Mm-hmm. And then that goes back to the whole premise of human-centered leaders. Yeah. Encouraging, modeling what it means to be human. Yeah. That vulnerable, that open, that inviting, and encouraging the rest of the workforce to be part of it. It's fascinating.
Oh, I love that. And I just think about it as going back to the basics, right? I watched this video of some kids, and they, the kids were obviously, in a, at least in a physical way, they were different. And the question that they were asked was, what's different between the two of you, right? If we were to ask that question to an adult, I would say, well, you're a white man, I'm a Latino man. We would talk about all these things that are like so strange, right? And these kids were talking about something like, oh, Brad likes spaghetti and I like pizza. And the other one was like, Brad doesn't like baseball and I like basketball. Like all these very, like meaningless things that they just needed to think about something because they thought of themselves as more united than divided by anything physical about them or, whatever we as adults could think of, right? And I like that because it's just going back to the basics, right? I mean, it's just like remove anything that may be preventing people from coming together, from working with each other, from collaborating organically with each other, from building meaningful connections with each other, rather than putting all these rules in place, all these policies in place that tell you, you got to ask permission for this, you don't have time for that, this is what you have to deliver, you can't talk to that person because it's a secret that what we're doing in here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we created all these rules that's really, we got to get rid of.
We do. We, in the book, the second chapter, the second rule is called "Listen Without Labels."
Yeah, I love that.
And the labels are the brain wanting to distill things to the simplest form. The reason, because when we're talking, I've got to be right. I've got to be able to respond to you so quickly. That's
Yeah.
society's telling us, as opposed to
Yeah.
saying, Enrique, I don't really have the answer. But what we do know is that when we begin to eliminate labels in our lives, in our work, your title, my title, the color of my skin, your nationality, this, that. My second chapter is called "Comma Who Is White, Comma." So Brad Deutser, who is white, and the reason why it's there to be shocking in some way, but people didn't understand. There was an article written about me, and it started with Brad Deutser, comma, who is white, is involved with major diversity, equity, inclusion, blah, 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 blah. And I was devastated. I was devastated that why was this important? I'm an expert at bringing people together, at creating communities, at bringing in different voices, at creating unity, at creating this sense of belonging. Yet I was reduced to a label.
Yeah.
And it worked for somebody. And so I loved the exploration in that chapter of saying it's not about the labels. My friend who was my partner in this was his name, comma, who is black. And he was like, why is that relevant? And he's the one who brought it to me. And I was like, Rich, it's a great thing. We're human beings.
Yeah.
As you said, go back to the very natural. We're connected.
Yeah.
I like spaghetti. You like macaroni. I like pizza. You like steak. I mean, what are the fun things that we share? At the end of the day, we both love food. Great.
Yeah.
That's what we come together. We come together on what we share.
Yeah, and I think in the pizza round, probably 9 out of 10 would say I like pizza. Like 9 out of 10 said that belonging was important for them at work. That would be probably one of the few things these days that we may be able to agree on. Probably not on the pineapple on the pizza, which I like, but a lot of people don't. But I know that probably pizza and ice cream are definitely great ways for people to connect with each other.
So maybe we should take that idea. And we should have belonging rules, pizza and ice cream parties all over the world, and celebrate what we share. The desire to belong, our love for pizza, and our love for ice cream.
I love that. We need to do more to bring people together. That's ultimately, it's funny because, I have my political views about the world and other people have their own. And when I talk to people that think differently about me, and I know they're my friends, and I know they think differently about me, and they vote for the other person, when I talk to them, we're like, you know what? What's funny is like we seem to agree on 99% of all the things. I don't know why we talk about what divide us if there are so many things that actually unite us, right? And I know this is not always the case, but hey, why don't we start from what unites us? And we grow it up from there, and we tackle conflict head on, because we will deal with conflict and difficult things and the hard things together. But we don't have to start from from the things that are different, from the labels that put you in that group and put me in this group. We can start from something, from the bridges, right, rather than the labels. So this excites me, and excites me about my work and the possibilities going forward. So Brad, this was an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, with our community, sharing all these insights. Everybody, if you're tuning in, please go and get your copy of Belonging Rules by Brad. And you can tell that you're going to get a lot of great insights out of the research that Brad and his team have done. So Brad, thank you so much once again for being here with me and our community, and sharing all these amazing insights.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting me into your community. I'm truly grateful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. I'll see you in one of our events at Hacking HR, or another Hacking HR live chat series, a conversation, or whatever it is that we are putting together for you. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day and week, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. We are going to be there soon.